today we're going to try to answer this question. I mean, you will hear that Azure SQL MI, it's like the future of SQL Server. I mean, every time that you hear about Azure SQL MI, you hear that, hey, why don't we move here? But wait, is this different than a normal SQL Server on-prem or infrastructure as a service? So today we're going to answer this question that I receive very often in my work. First of all, thank you very much for the sponsor. Thank you very much, Marco. First of all, for having me here. It's very important to have this kind of sponsor helping to these amazing events. Um, I will introduce myself. I am Gonzalo Vicio. Oh, I didn't change these slides. I forgot. I am a data and AI specialist in Microsoft. I changed my role last month, so that is why I didn't update this slide. I am, yes, from Buenos Aires, Argentina. Also, I am an Italian person because my grandmother was Italian, so I did my citizenship. My aunt is still there, so I went there 3 or 4 years ago. Um, you have my contact, you have my blog, anything you need. Obviously, I am a Rocky Balboa, so this is, I love that movie. So you will see some GIF in the middle of my presentation. In case that you need anything, just let me know. You have my email, you have my contact. I will be more than happy to help you. So let's start talking about this service. So we have different flavors in Azure. If you want to move your SQL, or if you want to move your database engine, you can choose different options. You have, for example, infrastructure as a service. It will be the same as you have, for example, in on-premises. This is just a VM. You have a database in where you, if you want to say, okay, I want to move this database from here to there, I want to move this database to Azure. You can use Azure SQL database. Depends on the size. You can choose, for example, a regular Azure SQL database or a hyperscale service tier if you want to move like a very big database up to 100 terabytes. But if you, for example, are using link servers, for example, if you're using jobs or if you're using cross-database queries, the best option will be managed instance. In where, I mean, this will be a service which is almost 100% the same as you have today, but we're going to talk very further in a few. Different options, as I mentioned, Azure SQL MI, Azure SQL Database, another option is this term of pool, like instance pool or elastic pool. In Azure SQL MI, it's in public preview, in where you can share, for example, you can pay for a single managed instance, but internally you can create multiple. For example, thinking about dev environment, if you want to only pay one, but use like 4 or 5, you can choose to purchase an instance pools. The same for Elastic Pool. It's not an instance, but you can share resources among different databases. I think that you saw this. I mean, this will be what are you going to care about if you have an VM. Obviously, you don't have the hardware or virtualization because it's in the cloud. For managed instance, you don't need to care about, for example, patches. You don't need to care about backups. You just need to care about just the instance and the service itself. But for Azure SQL Database, obviously you don't have instance level features because, as I mentioned before, it's a database, it's not an instance. Also, I think that you heard on the industry the term of hybrid. I mean, this is more and more and more, I would say, I mean, you will hear about this term a lot lately. One of the things that you can use is what, I mean, I think that you know, which is Azure Arc, in where you can install Azure services on your infrastructure. So if you don't want to move to the public cloud because some limitation, regulation, or whatever you have, you can use Azure Arc. And inside Azure Arc, you have Azure SQL Managed Instance. So in case that you want to combine your data center with the cloud, and you don't want to, for example, connect to the public cloud itself, you can use Azure Arc. And inside Azure Arc, you can use Managed Instance. So let's start talking about Managed Instance, the service tiers. These are the options that you can choose, but there are some differences. Um, General purpose and business critical are the one that born, I would say, with the service. And there are two new that I'm going to talk lately. So the most important thing that, besides, I would say, the price, the thing is you need to know what are the differences. I mean, this will be like, hey, I need to choose my CPU and my memory and my storage for my VM. It will be exactly the same. But instead of choosing hardware, you are going to choose service tiers. So what are the main difference based on my point of view? So, for example, let's see the, oops, sorry, let me see, yes. So, here's the thing. The first, I would say, big difference is like the general purpose will not have the storage assigned to the VM between quotes in where the service will run. So you will have remote blob storage. That will be one of the differences in where, I mean, in business critical, the storage is attached directly to the VM. So that will be, I mean, business critical will have more performance on the storage side. Um, Also, if we talk about storage, the size of the storage as of now in general purpose, you can choose up to 16 terabytes. It is in GA, which is awesome. In business critical, you can choose up to 4, but 16 is in public preview for one of the new service tier. Um, Another different thing is that you have some, I would say, high availability by default, meaning that, for example, if you choose business critical internally, we're going to talk about this in a few also. If you choose business critical internally, you will get an availability group of 4 nodes, and you will be able to, let's say that you want to offload your reads to a secondary, well, you will be able to do that without any extra price in business critical. In general purpose, you will have some passive nodes, so in case that something happens to the primary, automatically a passive node will appear. Another difference is the 10 dB size, in where in general purpose, the 10 dB depends on the number of beacons assigned to the service. But in business critical, that limit will be shared with the storage assigned to the instance. So be careful here. If you have any process, if you have a very big rebuild or something like that, just be careful because you can fill up the entire service storage size. Uh, in general purpose, how about HADR? Yes, I will show you in a few. So I mean, I was talking about the HADR that come by default. Let me see. Well, in a few, I will show you a graph just to show you the difference between one and the other one. So you can see the difference basically is that you have the node, the active node, you have the remote storage, you have the option. And for example, you have some passive nodes. If something happened to the VM, automatically the node will be removed from managed instance and another node will come up. And that's it. But you will not be able to offload reads and anything. But I will show you in a few. Familiar features, I think one of the keys, I would say, which is a native backup and restore, which is this one. Honestly, if you work with the cloud, I know that probably doing migrations, sometimes I can say that it can be a headache. But one of the amazing things of Azure SQL MI is that native backup and restore are supported. And honestly, the migrations are just backup and restore, and that's it. I mean, we can talk hours about migrations, but in case that you want to move quickly a database, you can backup and restore, and boom, that's it. Another thing that I mentioned at the very beginning is that the cross-database queries are supported. What does it mean? Well, I think that you choose in the past Azure SQL database. You move your databases and say, hey, why my application is not working? And you discover that if you execute queries between them, the queries will not work unless you use an external service. But I mean, I know that this, at least for me, it was a pain, but not now. Another thing, for example, I know that there are some applications that rely on jobs. Yes, it sounds strange, but honestly, I saw it. Um, and now you can use jobs. The same for example, leak servers, which is another thing that, I mean, I have some issues in the past. Besides, you can use extended events, DMVs, blah, 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 blah. Also, query store is enabled by default here. Besides, automatic tuning is enabled by default only to, on the new systems, to force plans. Before, I remember that create index was enabled, but not now. Another very important thing is about the security on the service. I know that being on the cloud is not an easy thing sometimes because of the security. Some mistakes can, I mean, provide issues, I would say. But the good thing is that the service itself is close to internet by default, which is an amazing thing because if you're using Azure SQL database, you will have to use a different service. So the amazing thing is that by default, Azure SQL MI is close to internet. So if you want to connect to Azure SQL MI, you have two ways: or you use, or you create your services or VMs on the same VNet that managed instance is, or you do the famous VNet peering just to make this connection, which is amazing, honestly. Another thing, I remember receiving this question honestly a lot. Hey, if I want to connect to Azure SQL MI, what can I use? Well, I mean, you can use Azure Data Studio, you can use SSMS, but the thing is, or the most important thing is, uh, can I use Windows Authentication? Because I mean, I moved my application. Another recommendation, obviously, is that if you move your database to Azure SQL MI, also move your applications to Azure, obviously. Believe me that I heard a bunch of things, applications running in on-premises, and then the database running in Azure. The thing is, I mean, the connectivity will be a huge problem, the latency. So my recommendation always is that if you're going to move your database from on-premises to Azure SQL MI, also move the application. Also, I received the comment that, hey, but I am using Windows Authentication. I am using my old connection string. Will that work? The answer as of now, as of today, is no. You can use Azure Active Directory. You can use Manage Identities. Or you can use the old method SQL Authentication. Probably you heard about the Windows Authentication thing. I will talk about that in a few. As I mentioned before, the VNet support. So this is honestly amazing. Honestly, I had to enable private links in a bunch of Azure SQL database that will be created, or that will be create another service, that will be create another DNS. And sometimes it's a headache because we have our InfoSec team saying, hey, you need to close this from internet, blah, 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 blah. So the good thing is that by default, this beautiful service, I love this service, honestly, is close to internet. Again, some, I would say, limits here if you want to check them before moving to this service. One limit to mention is about here. I don't think that I put it. No, let me see. Okay, no, I don't put it, which is the log rate limit. That will be how much data are we transferring from on-premises, from storage to, or how much log data we are transferring between the transaction log and the storage. So be careful with that. If you need any help, just let me know. And let's talk about the IOPS. Sometimes I receive, hey, but I mean, in on-premises or IaaS, it's easy to use performance monitor. I mean, how are you going to manage the IOPS thing? This is a little different between general purpose and business critical. For general purpose, this will depend obviously on the size of the file. This is very important. So you I mean, in case that you have this, a very important thing, this is not only about the size of the database, but also it's about the jobs that the service can provide you in general purpose for you. So let's say that you move your database and you discover that, hey, I need more jobs because of my workload, because of whatever. In general purpose, you need to be careful because if your database file is, I would say, smaller than 128 GB, you are going to have only 500 jobs. So important thing, before moving to Azure SQL MI, review this table based on what you need, basically. That will be the size of the file. So as I mentioned before, review this because this will be the number of IOPS that you're going to get per file. This is not per database, this is per file. Backups, I know that the backups give us some headaches sometimes. Hey, we are working, we receive a bunch of tickets, say, hey, the backups are not working, the backup failed, the log backup failed, and you receive a huge number of tickets on your queue. So you will not to worry about anymore about backups because everything is automated. You don't need to care about this because Microsoft will do it for you. The schedule is more or less between 5 and 10 minutes. You can use, if you want, extended events to check that those backups are happening. The important thing is the backup retention, so you can choose that. The default is 7. If this is a dev environment or a test environment or a QA environment, you can move it to 1 because it's a QA environment. Obviously, you can configure this up to 35 days. In case that you need more time, you can configure the long-term backup retention, which is in GA. Amazing. You can save your backups up to 10 years. Another thing that happened to me is that some applications need to have their backups in, I would not say on premises, well, I would say on premises, but I would say locally in their country because of some regulation. It happened to me a bunch. But in case that you want to execute between quotes an ad hoc backup, you can execute them to upload storage and then download to your data center or to your location. So in case that you have a regulation problem, well, you can solve with this. Replication. I know that a bunch of people love replication. I would say that from my point of view, it's a replication feature and that's it. But some people loves replication. Do you want to use replication? Well, you can use it here. So in case that you want to use Azure SQL MI as a subscriber, you can use it. The same for distributor, the same for publisher. I mean, you can play with this. In case that you want to use it, probably you heard the service SQL Data Sync, a small thing. That service as of now doesn't support Azure SQL MI in case that you use it, but you can use replication in order to replicate data, or you can use Data Factory or whatever you want. But in case that you want to use replication, you can use it. Service broker database mail is supported in case that you want to receive emails. Well, you can use that besides service broker. One of the cool things about the cloud is that you can scale up. Sometimes you say, hey, for example, I don't know, this is a key day because we have some offers in our business, but I need more beacons and I need more, obviously, memory, and I want to scale up my service. Can I do that? Well, the answer is yes. The process will start. It will create a new infrastructure. It will start copying, and then there will be a failover between the old and the new one. There will be a small downtime. If this takes like, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours or whatever time it takes, you are not going to have 2 hours of downtime. You are going to have a couple of second downtime because there will be a failover and endpoint change. But the most important thing is that you can do that. But if you change it, can you return to the old beacons? The answer is yes, you can scale up or scale down, which is amazing. Instance pool, one of the things that I mentioned at the very beginning, if you want to share, for example, or if you want to pay for something but internally use more managed instance, you can do that. As of now, it's in public preview, but you can use that option. Some limitation, no issues, trace flag, blah, 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 blah. Another thing that I received, well, not, yes, I would say that I received today, even though I changed my role, is how can we save cost? Because that is something that I received a bunch. One of the amazing benefits is that we have Azure Hybrid Benefit. What does it mean? Because maybe you hear this term a bunch. So Azure Hybrid Benefit is basically a benefit that allows you to move your on-premises licenses to the service, to Azure SQL Managed, to a VM, to Azure SQL Database. Azure SQL Database only on the vCore mode, not on the DTU. So the thing is, you can save a bunch, but you need to, I mean, here you will see that I don't know if you will see here a link in where you can use the calculation to calculate how many licenses you are going to need if you use, for example, let's say that you use general purpose. If you choose general purpose, you can obviously, I mean, there is a ratio between your existing license and your service. For example, if you are using, I don't know, 4 vCore business critical, as you can see here in the example. Okay, how many licenses do I need to enable this benefit? If I am using here 4 vCores, I will need 4 enterprise edition licenses with software assurance. If you don't have software assurance, you cannot enable this. But this will save, I will show you in a few, in some demos, all the money that you can save. And this is amazing, honestly. But you have the calculator there link in case that you want to calculate how many licenses you're going to need. You can use the link. Again, blah, 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 Azure Hybrid Benefit. But also there is another benefit called reserve instances. You don't need anything to reserve an instance. Let's say that you say, hey, I know that this service will be live for years and years, and you want to reserve your instance up to 3 years. That means that if you reserve this instance, you're going to have some discounts. What will happen if you delete this Azure SQL MI? Well, obviously you're going to lose the benefit. Can I say, hey, I want to reserve this particular instance on this particular subscription? The answer is no. You are going to reserve a managed instance. As long as you have a managed instance with those vCores, etc., the benefit will apply for any Azure SQL MI if you have more than one. I have some customers that reserve, for example, I don't know, 48 cores because they have multiple managed instances. So as long as you have all of those vCores on your subscription, you are going to receive the benefit. If you combine Azure Hybrid Benefit and the reserve instances, you're going to have more discounts. In case, I know that this is not easy, in case that you have any question, that you have any real example and you want to review this, just drop me an email or let me know and I will help you without any problem. High availability, I think that Arun asked about this. So here's the thing. We talk about the high availability, a term that I love because sometimes we receive this kind of questions. We receive a bunch of comments from customers saying, "Hey, I want to be my application resilient." So here we have 2 high availabilities. One is the one that comes with the service by default, and the other one that we can configure. So in general purpose, as I mentioned before, but here at least we have a beautiful graph. We can talk about active compute nodes. As I mentioned, the remote blob storage that this service here will use. And here we have these redundant nodes. Basically, what will happen, hey, if something happens here, this one will come up and this will do, there will be a failover and that's it. Period. Very simple. In business critical, as I mentioned, we will have, well, some people call this feature always on, other ones availability group, other ones always on availability group. It's up to you. You can choose the term that you want. But here you have up to 4 nodes. As I mentioned, can you offload your reads here? The answer is yes. You can use the application intent read-only. You need to use the database or the initial catalog parameter on the connection string, and automatically the connection will be redirected here. And this one for free, you don't need to pay anything extra. But I mean, another thing is, hey, can I execute a failover in order to test this? The answer is yes. You can use PowerShell to execute failover and move from here to here. Yes, you can do that. Obviously, there will be a downtime because it's a failover, you know that. But you can do this. But let's say that you have your customer that say, hey, I have 2 different regions. In case that something happened to the primary region, I want to have a secondary region. Do you have any feature? The answer is yes, which is out of a lower group. So here you can protect your service from an outage region. Obviously, if there is an outage region, you will see this on the media, right? But anyway, if you want to protect your service, or for example, here you have your application on this side, on the other region, pointing to here, well, you can have this also. A very important thing, because I am hearing this a lot. What will happen if I have, for example, here an application, let's say application, obviously, and we have in the middle, I don't know, a load balancer, or we have here something that it is moving traffic between different regions. Important thing is that if you want to read or if you want to write here, it is an availability group. You cannot write on the other region. So very important thing if you are thinking of, hey, I am routing traffic between the 2 regions depending of where the request is coming. Very important thing. I mean, you can't write in both regions. So if you are designing a high availability solution, remember this. If you want to do reads, yes, you can use both. There will be 2 different endpoints. But if you need to write in both regions, that will not work. Obviously, if you are on the second region and you want to write, this will do this. Oops, sorry. If you are writing, you're going to use the read-write listener. And if you are writing here, let's say we are writing here, you are going to write here, not here. So there will be a delay between the different regions. So be careful with that. If you're going to do that, because I saw it a lot, test it, because maybe there will be a latency difference between the regions and maybe the performance will be impacted because of that. Anyway, if you have any question, let me know. Another thing, monitoring Azure SQL Managed instance. Hey, Gonzalo, I am using it on premises. My monitoring system, what will happen here? One of the things is Azure Monitor, that you can use log analytics in order to monitor your system. There is a SQL Insight model that you can use. As of now, it's in public preview, but you can use that in case that you want to monitor your service, or if you are using, for example, SCOM. I use this one a lot in some former jobs that I have. If you want to monitor your service, you can use this. Also, you can use the portal. You can use the metrics that I'm going to show you in a few. What I will do while I am drinking this one is called mate in Argentina. I don't know if there is any other question. I saw Aaron's one, but I am not seeing. Okay, no question. Nice. Oh, Nico is here. Oh, my friend Nico Noshibai is here. I can't believe it. Oh, Nico. I think that Nico is going to talk about this, or he already talked, so I think that I move forward. Let me see if I can show you a little demo. 1 second. Dun, 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 dun. So here, let me move this little guy here. So Azure SQL Managed, this is the portal. Important thing, if you want to create it, you just search for SQL Managed instances. You click create. It's very simple. Okay, resource group. I mean, you know that a resource group is a container of your services or your resources. Here a name. Let's say Nico is here. So Nico, I mean, it's amazing. I don't know if you know him, but he's amazing. Let me use US West 3 so I can show you the new hardware series. So here you can choose the service tier, as I mentioned before, general purpose business critical. Here we have the new hardware generation one, in where you can have more memory per beacon. A question that I receive very often, and I forgot to mention, can you use a fixed number of memory on your service? The answer is no. For example, hey Gonzalo, you know that I have my VM in where I have 8 cores and I don't know, 128 gigabytes of memory. Can I do the same? The answer is no, you can't. You can't choose memory per vCore. So this will be automatically. The one which is in GA, the one that all of the people know is this one, which is 5.1 gigabytes per vCore. And we have these two, the new ones, in where you can have more memory. Another important thing, you can just use unit of 32 gigabytes on the storage. Hey Gonzalo, I want to use 40 gigabytes. Can I do that? The answer is no. So another important thing is that if you want to use more space, obviously you need to use more vCore. Let's say that you want to use 16 gigabytes, 16 terabytes, sorry. Yes, it's Saturday in the morning, sorry. So if you want to use 16 terabytes, you need to choose more vCore. So, hey, Gonzalo, I heard that you say that I can use 16 terabytes in general purpose. What happened? Well, that you need to use more vCores. Here we have the hybrid benefit that you can enable. Besides, you have here business critical, and here the new series that you can start testing 16 terabytes only for this premium series memory optimized. Let me, I don't know, I will choose this one. Backup storage redundancy. Here you can just use or allows Azure to move or to copy the backup of the instance to another region, to another zone, or locally. Obviously, there will be different prices, but in case that something happened and you need to restore your database, you can choose any of these options. Let me see. Let's just confirm apply. Yes, Microsoft. I mean, I am using your hybrid benefit. Another improvement that came a couple of months ago is that you can restrict what are the authentication methods. I know that some people, for example, disable essays users, or for example, some people decide to use only Azure Active Directory authentication. Well, you can use that. You can restrict this. Password user, blah, 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 blah. Networking, the one that I mentioned that you can choose, you can create your own VNet or subnet, or you can allow the service to create it. Some other important things, this is very important because it happened to me. I was in a very big company working. We started receiving P1 ticket and it was like, hey, what happened? And there was a policy that changed it, everything to 1.2 TLS because we have some old services. A very important thing is that you need to review this. Can you disable this? Well, I tested this 3 months ago, more or less, 4 months ago, I think, and I was able to disable this using PowerShell to use the none option. But obviously the recommendation is to review if your application support this. Do you have this, Thomas? No, I don't have it. Uh, but if you infrastructure as code, I mean, if you're talking about infrastructure as code and you use, I don't know, Terraform or something like that, I can search it for you, Thomas. Okay, security, blah, blah, blah. Additional settings, another very important thing is you can choose a different collation. This is very important if you don't want to have some headaches on the collation side with the TMDB and all that stuff. Tags, I use tags, for example, in order to tag who is the owner of the service, cost collector, environment, customer, blah, 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 blah. Review and create, boom, it will start. How long this will take? Well, between 3 and 6 hours, more or less, it will take, because a bunch of things will be created, virtual cluster, among other things. And you are going, and once this finish, you're going to see something like this. This is your service. Obviously, AdventureWorks, yes, I always choose this database. How can you scale up? Well, here you can move, for example, from 4 to 32. You click apply, boom, the process will start. That's it. It's very simple, honestly. Maintenance, obviously, when there is, for example, I don't know, maintenance on the hosting where the service will run, you can choose the window on when the maintenance will run. Let's say that, hey, my system is not 24/7, so I can choose this maintenance windows. Boom, you can choose that, click save, and that's it. Failover groups, high availability, you can configure it here. Defender for Cloud, well, this little guy changed 5 times on the last 3 years, honestly. I remember that I was doing a presentation for another Data Saturday, and I remember that this one changed from one day to another, and it was like, hey, what happened here? But yes, I mean, this one will change a lot, the name at least. Vulnerability thing, I mean, here you can enable, which is Defender for Cloud, in case that you want to receive some recommendations from the service. And I think that I have 3 more minutes, and I am not seeing questions, so I will show you a very beautiful thing. So from my point of view, one of the game changer for this service is that you don't need to care about, for example, to migrate this Azure SQL MI to a managed instance V2. One of the questions that I received from different customers is that, hey, Gonzalo, I want to forget about migrating my database. Honestly, for us, it's a pain because every time that we need to migrate the database, I need to talk to the provider, I need to talk to the VA, I need to talk to whoever is going to do the migration. We need to plan this for months. So I want a solution that makes me forget about migrating my database. Well, Azure SQL MI is one. Why? Because if you migrate to this service, you will be always on the latest SQL version. And for example, as you can see here, I was able to change my compatibility level to SQL 2022. So that is, for me, it's a key aspect on choosing, for example, this service. Another thing that I mentioned here, jobs. For example, I don't know, if I right click here and I click properties, you will see similar to SQL Server, which is almost the same. But the difference is that you have Azure SQL MI. Obviously, you can't change memory, but you can change some things here. We have our little guy here. We can change this. We can change this. We can change this in case that you want to use it. For example, through cost threshold 50 or whatever. You click OK, boom, it will be changed for the instance itself. Security, well, logins, here you have jobs, or as I mentioned, hey, Gonzalo, you said that query store is enabled by default. Yes, it's enabled by default, as you can see here. For example, Gonzalo, I use partitioning. Can I use it? The answer is yes, you can use partitioning in case that you want to. A very important thing is that, if you migrate to Azure SQL MI, Two very important things before closing. The one is that if you migrate, obviously you will see the compatibility level, I mean, on the source. If you migrate this one from 2017, from 2014, 2016, you are going to see the compatibility levels that you were using in the past. So you need to change this. Remember to change this. And another, please, very important thing is that, hey, Gonzalo, I moved my database from on-premises, from infrastructure as a service to managed instance. Do I have to maintain my database? Yes, the answer is yes. It is exactly the same. So you need to, for example, if you're using a solution that I love, which is all a solution. Yes, you can implement that solution here. You must to maintain your database here. You need to rebuild your indexes. You need to update your statistics. I mean, some people don't want to rebuild indexes or reorganize. Some people want to update only the statistic. Well, you can do that and you must. You don't imagine how many times I receive comment from my customers saying, hey, I have a performance issue. And I say, hey, are you maintaining your indexes or updating your statistics? And I receive no, because it's a service. This will be maintained automatically. The answer is no, you need to maintain them. So please maintain them.
There is a question of Thomas.
Yeah, I think that Thomas was talking about the infrastructure as code for MI demo, right, Thomas? So it's right on the chat because I don't have that. Yes, no, I don't have. I know that there is one for Terraform. In one shop, I use Azure DevOps in order to automate that infrastructure as code thing. But in case that you want it, just drop me an email and I will send it to you. And sure, no problem. And obviously, I don't know if there is any other question.